Cersei Lannister had dreamed of the Red Keep since she was a child clutching cloth of gold ribbons in Casterly Rock's shadowed training yard, eyes bright as molten coin while the sea wind sang of power. Yet when at last she reached King's Landing, as brazen and dazzling as the sunset banners of her house, she found its gilded stones kneeling to another sort of radiance entirely. Prince Rhaegar Targaryen awaited her on the steps of Maegor's Holdfast, and in the red light of a dying afternoon, his silver-pale hair glimmered like a sword half-drawn. The hush that fell over the court felt preordained, as though some hidden harp string had been plucked in perfect pitch. Cersei's heartbeat stuttered at the poetry of that first sight. A dragon prince carved by a troubadour's longing, tall and grave-eyed, bestowed upon her by destiny, or, more accurately, by her father's iron arithmetic. Tywin Lannister watched from beneath the shadow of the throne room's high doors, every inch the austere hand of the king, yet privately pleased to see those violet eyes dip in the slightest bow. Gold and fire would mingle now. Lannister wealth would shore a throne grown unstable beneath Aerys's paranoia, and in return the Rock would stand one heartbeat from royalty. Tywin had driven the bargain with a surgeon's calm. Cersei for Rhaegar, Jaime for the White Cloak, Lannister gold for the realm's solvency. And if Aerys was too proud to admit the value of the pact, Rhaegar, unyielding in duty if melancholic by nature, had accepted, sealing the match with a gravity far older than his years. In private audiences, the prince's courtesy unsettled Cersei more than any open disdain. He spoke gently of poets lost to history, of Summerhall's ghosts and prophecies half-remembered, yet never of love. The songs proclaimed Rhaegar's voice could freeze a river and melt a maid's resolve in the same verse. Cersei heard instead a subtle distance in his measured tones, as though he conversed with fate itself and she were but a necessary verse in the melody. That wounded her Lannister pride more than she admitted even to Jaime, whose letters arrived weekly from the crag. An endless litany of sword drills, japes, and desperate affection she forced herself to answer with buoyant lies. Autumn settled over the city with the scent of smoke and lemon cakes. Cersei learned to navigate the court less as Tywin's daughter than as the soon-to-be dragon princess. Smiles weighed, glances balanced. Varys slithered near with powdered hands and silken reassurances. Grand Maester Pycelle extolled her fortunate womb. Highborn ladies pressed close, eager to forecast the color of future heirs' eyes. Yet the person she came to study most was Queen Rhaella. Too dignified for the pity of a young bride, Rhaella drifted through her husband's halls like a pale gull over storm water, each step dignified yet adrift. Watching the queen endure Aerys's sudden furies taught Cersei a lesson colder than the wall's wind. Crowns did not protect against cruelty, power did. Prince Rhaegar's room in the White Sword Tower held a single harp, polished to midnight depth. One evening, months before their wedding, Cersei found him there, fingers coaxing a minor key so fragile it trembled under torchlight. She stood transfixed until the final note dissolved. He asked her then, quietly, almost regretfully, whether she knew of Azor Ahai, of the prince that was promised. She answered with wry pride that prophecy bent before lions no less than dragons. The corner of Rhaegar's mouth curved, neither mockery nor mirth, an expression she would chase for years without pinning to certainty. Their wedding day dawned crisp as a Lannister minted coin. Cersei's gown was a cascade of red silk stitched with golden roses, jeweled lions roaring at each hip. Rhaegar wore black velvet trimmed in rubies that caught sunrise and scattered it against the sept's marble floor. Aerys attended draped in starfire cloth, fingers twitching restlessly at his belt, his smile too bright. When Septon Barth's successor pronounced them man and wife, the roar outside the dragon pit shook dust from the arches. Cersei felt the realm pivot beneath her high-heeled slippers. Yesterday a girl, today the future queen consort. That first night in Maegor's Holdfast unfolded like a negotiation between strangers. Rhaegar's touch was reverent, almost scholarly, lacking the hungry urgency Cersei imagined. He treated her body as he treated his harp, coaxing beauty from each small secret, yet withdrawing at climax into some private chamber inside himself she could not breach. She feigned satisfaction and vowed inwardly she would teach him to burn. For what were dragons if not fire incarnate? In the months that followed, Small councils buzzed with Tywin's initiatives. Debts repaid in Lannister gold, grain stores replenished along the King's Road, Dornish envoys soothed with trade concessions. Cersei saw the way courtiers now approached her father, no longer merely hand, but the man who held the throne's purse strings. She also noticed how Ser Barristan Selmy's steady gaze lingered on Rhaegar's pensive silences, how Lord Cannington's brow furrowed when ravens arrived from Dragonstone bearing cryptic reports on storms and comets. Rumors reached them of Robert Baratheon's laughter echoing across the Stormlands, of Brandon Stark's reckless boasts in Winterfell's mead hall, of how Oberyn Martell sharpened a spear tip meant for a sister slighted. Yet within the Red Keep, a quieter battle brewed. Cersei versus prophecy itself. Moon Tea went untouched. Maesters confirmed no seed quickened. Rhaegar studied astronomical charts at dusk, murmuring of red stars and smoldering swords. But when Cersei pressed for a prince, he only smiled with polite sorrow, as though some celestial clock ticked beyond her ken. She retaliated with brilliance. Feasts where Lannister bards sang ballads reviving Valyria's glory, tournaments where knights wore her favorite golden red, audiences where she dispensed alms and flattery with equal poise. The small folk named her Golden Grace, and whispers spread that she outshone the dragon herself. Still, her belly remained stubbornly flat, and every morning she woke alone in bedsheets cool where Rhaegar had lain. Jaime arrived on the wings of winter, a newly anointed knight of the Kingsguard. His smile a blade disguised as joy. He knelt before his sister queen in the sunlit throne room, ivory cloak pooling like spilled cream, and for one heartbeat Cersei glimpsed their childhood in his green eyes. The two of them racing through stone warrens at the Rock, conspirators before they learned the language of secrets. But when Jaime rose, it was not to her but to Aerys he swore his life, and Cersei tasted iron behind her teeth. Later, in her solar, she grasped his hands and hissed that they had been parted for politics. But politics could not sever blood. Jaime kissed her knuckles and promised the world would bend, though even he did not know how. The year turned, and with it the prince's solitude deepened. King's Landing woke one dawn to the news that Rhaegar had quit the city for Dragonstone, leaving only a parchment instructing Lord Cannington to oversee preparations for a spring tourney at Harrenhal. Cersei's fury flared hotter than wildfire. Tywin counseled patience. A lioness roaring could still be caged by a dragon king. Yet Cersei would not be comforted. She rode to Dragonstone under heavy guard, braving cold salt spray to confront her husband amidst ancient furnaces and echoes of doom. There, in the shadow of crumbling dragons, he confessed a nightmare. Of fields of ash, of shadows with bright blue eyes, of a song of ice and fire that required sacrifice. Cersei, raised on litanies of debts and oaths, answered that the realm needed heirs, not riddles. Rhaegar laid a hand upon her cheek, murmured that he would love their child, but his gaze drifted to some horizon she could not see. They returned together for the tourney's opening, each cloaked in courtesy. The towers of Harrenhal rose black against a blooming sky, their melted stone a monument to both dragonfire and human hubris. Lords gathered in shimmering hosts, Stark wolves in gray and white, Baratheon stags bronzed by wind, Martell sons glittering like molten copper. Songs later would claim Rhaegar rode that day in jet-hued armor studded with rubies. Truth whispered he wore silver and red for his Lannister bride, gems wrought in lion shapes along his vambrace. On the morning of the melee, Cersei stood upon the Lord's gallery, her gown a rippling banner of scarlet. As Rhaegar tilted his lance toward the lists, she lifted a golden handkerchief in token, and the crowd thundered approval. Lyanna Stark watched from below, snow-sired and wary, but no eyes lingered on her long. Rhaegar's victory was near inevitable. Each unhorsed knight thudded to dust beneath the dragon's careful grace. When at last he claimed the champion's garland, a hush fell. Would he pass the queen to crown a northern flower, as the stories once told? But Rhaegar rode straight to Cersei, knelt, and placed the crown of winter roses at her feet with solemn respect. The cheer that followed cracked Harrenhal's brittle ceilings. Somewhere in the stands, Robert Baratheon laughed too loudly, and Brandon Stark muttered of southern pageantry. Yet the realm witnessed a union sealed before gods and men. That night, dancers whirled between towering hearths, while minstrels wove melodies of lion and dragon entwined. Cersei moved among them radiant, yet beneath her jewels she catalogued every slight. Jon Arryn's reserved nod, Ned Stark's cool politeness, Jon Connington's worried frown. On a balcony above the hall, she met Rhaegar alone. Starlight silvered his hair. For once, desire smoldered openly in his eyes. He spoke of children born of fire and gold, of a realm united by song, of the long night held at bay by two bright hearts beating as one. Cersei replied with a kiss fierce enough to bruise, whispering that together they could forge prophecy into a crown of unbreakable steel. Winter's first flakes drifted through blackened gaps in Harrenhal's roof as dawn crept across the lake. In those fragile hours, the future seemed pliant. Yet miles away, King Aerys paced the Red Keep, rumors of revolt coiling around his fevered mind. Whispers told of Tywin's ambitions, of Rhaegar's growing legend, of northern honor affronted by southern pride. Aerys's nails scratched bloody crescents into his palms, while wildfire dreams slithered through his skull. The Mad King had suffered the insult of Tywin's resignation once. He would not abide the rise of a Lannister queen beside his son without cost. When Cersei and Rhaegar rode south again, ravens raced ahead. The king summoned Lord Rhaegar Stark to answer charges fabricated in the hollows of paranoia. What followed, fires in the throne room, screams beneath the brazen bull armor of Lord Stark, was uglier than any prophecy. Jaime, white cloak fresh as fallen snow, watched helpless while Aerys laughed amid the stench of burning flesh. The prince arrived too late to halt the horror, but in his eyes Cersei saw a dagger-sharp resolve. Aerys must be ended before his madness swallowed the realm. In the black hours after, Tywin Lannister gathered his household and weighed treason against pragmatism. To defend his daughter's crown, he would march, but only when the winning side was clear as daylight on Casterly Rock. Meanwhile, Robert Baratheon fled to Storm's End, rage boiling. Jon Arryn raised the banners of the Vale. Eddard Stark carried Brandon's ashes north with vengeance in his silent wake. Dragons and lions had forged a golden chain, yet the links now stretched toward war. Cersei clutched her stomach in the hush of her bedchamber, half certain she felt a flutter of life at last. If a child had quickened, it would be born into fire and blood, and she, Cersei of House Lannister, would see that it wore the world like cloth of gold. She rose, donned a cloak the same shade as Heart's blood, and stepped onto the balcony overlooking Blackwater Bay. Far below, ships readied with Lannister coin, Targaryen oaths, and silent secrets. The wind tasted of salt and ash, of endings and beginnings intertwined. Behind her, Prince Rhaegar entered without sound, his silver hair loose about his face. He laid a hand upon her shoulder, warm as summer sun. "We ride at dawn," he said, voice low, and she knew the die had been cast. Whether prophecy named him savior or destroyer mattered little now. Their fates were braided tighter than any septon's prayer. Together they would carve a realm anew, or see it drown beneath dragonfire and lion's roar. In the east, the sky bruised purple, hinting at storms. Cersei smiled, baring teeth worthy of the rock, and whispered to the gathering dark, "Let them come." The first gray glimmer of morning came filtered through a thin veil of mist that clung to the Blackwater like ghost breath, and Cersei felt the weight of it settle over her shoulders as tangibly as the crimson cloak her maid draped into place. She had slept barely an hour, if the anxious drifting between candle marks could be called sleep at all. Yet her pulse thrummed with a strange, bright energy, as though the blood in her veins had turned to molten gold. Outside the small door to Maegor's Holdfast, a kettle of ravens cawed in ragged chorus, and the sound felt like augury. Omens gathering, impatient for their hour. Prince Rhaegar awaited her in the courtyard. The mist softened the hard edges of stone and steel, but nothing could mute the severity of his armor. Mirror-polished plate chased in flowing tracery of red enamel lions, a concession to her house that would surely be recounted by every minstrel from Old Town to the Wall. His helm, under one arm, bore the three-headed dragon wrought in garnet and gold instead of rubies alone. Lion and dragon entwined so cunningly that neither seemed to dominate. the metal lines blending like two heralds wedded in a single sigil. When he saw her, he bowed low, too formal for husband to wife, yet flawlessly correct for prince to princess. Cersei ignored the faint sting that formality still brought and offered her hand to be kissed. His lips were warm, but his eyes remained remote, fixed on something distant she could neither see nor share. The royal host mustered in breathtaking silence, a rare feat for soldiers and banners on the move. Lannister red cloaks mingled with Targaryen black, the gold lions and crimson dragons snapping on high spears as a cool wind funneled up from the river. Connington's vanguard wore half-helms shaped like snarling wyverns. The City Watch Company's Tywin had reinforced marched in precise phalanxes, their new lion badges still stiff with fresh embroidery. Cersei noted the line of supply wagons, dozens of them, each secured by chains of gleaming brass that had cost the crown nothing, the rock everything. Father's handwriting had been unsparing on that subject. Your dowry is the realm itself. Guard it. Jaime waited just beyond the gates, mounted on a dappled gray destrier that tossed its mane at the cold. Ser Barristan stood at his shoulder, grave as a marble effigy. One white cloak gleamed new, the other worn smooth by years of service. The two men might have been mirror images separated by decades. When Cersei rode past, Jaime's expression betrayed nothing to a casual eye, but she saw the flicker of silent promise beneath. She wanted to reach out, to clasp his gloved hand and draw strength, but too many eyes watched. Instead, she inclined her chin, the gesture slight enough to be taken for regal indifference. They set out as the bells of the great September tolled prime. The columns wound south along the Rose Road, the clatter of hooves blending with the steady rumble of wagon wheels. Cersei rode beside Rhaegar at first, yet conversation proved elusive. Each time she ventured a question, on supply routes or camp discipline or the next council meeting, he answered in few words, distracted. At length, she drifted back to the rear of the princely guard, choosing the company of her cousin Ser Lancel and Lady Tina Merryweather for lighter talk. Tina, ever keen to curry favor, chattered of wardrobe innovations for pregnancy, dropping the word as casually as a petal. Cersei bared her teeth in what might pass for a smile. She had told no one, not yet, that her courses were late. The secret felt like a seedling sprouting in the dark, too fragile for open air. By noon, they halted near a field of half-harvested turnips where a ramshackle inn offered a courtyard large enough for the prince's tent. Connington and Arthur Dane unrolled campaign maps. Cersei joined them unbidden, planting herself opposite Rhaegar and studying the painted rivers and sigils as though she had spent her life at war councils. Connington proposed a swift advance to the Trident to break Robert's nascent alliance before it fermented into open rebellion. Dane favored marching first on Dragonstone to gather additional levies, arguing that abandoning the island left their rear exposed. Rhaegar listened, head bowed, fingers tapping the pommel of his sword in a rhythm Cersei recognized from his harp practice. When he raised his gaze, a hush settled. "We split our strength and we lose," he said. "The Crown's armies must strike as one, swift, decisive, uncompromising." His violet eyes found Cersei's. "But we cannot allow the Mad King's shadow to trail us into every village we pass. Ser Connington, ensure quartermasters pay in coin, not threats. Ser Arthur, remind each commander that we fight for peace, not pillage." The men nodded, yet Cersei perceived their hesitation. Peace was a noble banner, but Robert Baratheon had rallied half the Stormlands with a war cry promising vengeance. Even Jon Arryn, measured, cautious Jon Arryn, had raised the Ares banners. Peace alone would not suffice. She leaned forward, letting her voice slip between the knight's austere baritones like satin across steel. "Symbols matter," she said. "We ride beneath a new sigil. Let the realm see lions and dragons together at the van. Send heralds ahead to every village announcing lowered taxes and full tariffs paid by the crown on grain. If we must make war, let us buy love with coin before blood is spent." Connington's mouth twitched, uncertain whether a princess might dictate strategy. But Rhaegar inclined his head, one silver lock falling across his brow. "It shall be done," he said, and suddenly Cersei felt the council pivot, if only by a degree, toward her orbit. That evening, a thin rain needled the canvas roofs, but inside the prince's pavilion the air smelled of mulled wine and cedar shavings. Rhaegar dismissed his squires early, then found his wife seated at a field desk, quill hovering over blank parchment. She had begun a letter to Tywin, though every phrase felt either too proud or too pleading. When she sensed Rhaegar's presence, she did not rise, but her shoulders stiffened. "You spoke well today," he said. "The men listened. The men listened to a prince," she corrected, eyes on the parchment. "Not a wife." She forced herself to dip the quill and inscribe a greeting. "My most stalwart father." Rhaegar moved behind her, palms resting lightly on her shoulders. "I listened to my wife," he murmured. The warmth of his hands seeped through silk. Cersei closed her eyes, the quill still poised. How many nights had passed since he last visited her chambers without the distance of duty? Too many. She longed to turn, to draw him down beside her, to bury prophecy beneath the immediacy of flesh. Instead, she heard herself ask, "Will you truly yield command if your father orders another course?" A thin exhale. "My father sees enemies in every shadow. I see only one enemy now, and he rides under a crowned stag." He paused. "My father's crown weighs upon me, yet until I wear it, I cannot cast it aside." She turned then, looking up. "You mean to depose him?" A moment's silence, as raindrops stitched a steady tattoo above. "I mean to save the realm from his madness," Rhaegar said. "If that requires the throne." He broke off, gaze raw for once, rid of that distant glaze. "Would you stand with me, Cersei?" The question struck her like a physical blow, yet not from surprise. She had waited a lifetime to stand beside a king. Her answer came easily. "I would stand above the ashes of the world if it placed our child upon a safer future." The word child hung between them, delicate and dangerous. She watched him search her face. She gave no further hint. Let him wonder, let him hunger. That night they shared a bed as husband and wife in truth, no scholar's reverence. Rhaegar's kiss tasted of spiced wine, his touch urgent, almost fierce, as though he too sensed the turning tide. When at last they lay still, his arm draped over her waist, Cersei listened to the rain redouble, drumming a lullaby no bard could match. She considered waking him to speak of the life that might be quickening inside her, but some instinct held her tongue. Secrets wielded properly were sharper than Valyrian steel. The march resumed at dawn, slower now as autumn rains turned dirt roads into sucking mire. Wagons bogged axle-deep, and silver-shod horses labored. Cersei rode at the front often, her crimson cloak visible to every farmer who peered out from sagging cottages. She greeted children with coin, praised local septas in passing, and ordered cooks to purchase excess turnip stock so villagers would not go hungry after her army left. Some knights grumbled at the expenditure, but Cersei saw the gratitude in the small folks' eyes, and the silent nod Rhaegar granted her each night. Rumors flew with the ravens. Lord Hoster Tully had declared for the rebels after learning of Brandon Stark's cruel death. Jon Arryn's banners traversed the bloody gate in numbers not seen since the Age of Heroes. Robert Baratheon, furious at the murder of his beloved lioness kin, had sworn by every god that he would drink wine from the skull of the dragon spawned of lions. The phrase spread like wildfire, stoking men's hearts against the crown. Cersei scoffed when she heard it first, yet in her tent at night the words haunted her like an echo in the dark. Skull of the dragon spawned of lions. She pressed her palm to her abdomen. Let him try. Outside Riverrun, rain gave way to brittle sunshine, and Rhaegar called a halt to plan the next advance. There, under tricolor Targaryen Lannister banners, the queen-in-waiting oversaw the digging of latrine trenches, the rationing of beer, and the quartering of pikemen across 3 villages to avoid billeting too heavily on anyone. Jaime visited her each dusk, ostensibly to report on discipline within the City Watch contingents, but truly to steal moments alone. They spoke in whispers beside a brazier, the glow casting amber across Jaime's fair hair until it resembled her own. Once he brushed back a stray curl from her cheek and murmured that she looked every inch a queen. Cersei shivered at his touch, but duty dug claws into her spine. When he dared to kiss her gloved knuckles, she allowed it, nothing more. Eyes watched everywhere. One night, as she poured wine for Rhaegar, he surprised her with a question. "My queen, does gold know loyalty?" Cersei tilted the goblet, considering. "Gold is neutral," she said slowly, "but men who covet gold may be led toward loyalty. If the gold flows along the path we desire." She sipped and added, "Why?" Rhaegar set aside a scroll he had been reading since supper, its wax seal broken and edges frayed. "A raven from Sunspear. Doran Martell offers to mediate if my father surrenders the men responsible for Princess Alia's slights." His voice clouded. "Alia's health suffers. She will not bear another child." Cersei forced herself to show neither satisfaction nor pity. What does Doran want in return? Safety for Elia and the children should the throne change hands. Rhaegar's gaze was heavy, and assurances that Casterly Rock's gold remains available until the fighting ends. Cersei saw the trap at once. Place the Lannister coffers under Martell oversight, and Dorne would hold a stranglehold on the war chest. She let out a soft laugh. "Tell the Prince of Dorne that House Lannister's gold serves the crown, not any satrapy, and remind him that lions have claws." Rhaegar's mouth twitched, a flicker of wry amusement. "You speak as my hand might. Then make me such," she said, pulse quickening. "The realm needs a steady steward while its men swing swords." She expected refusal, or at least gentle evasion, but Rhaegar only leaned back, studying her. "I will consider it," he said at last, "when victory is certain." Victory remained distant. Scouts returned with tidings of Robert's host swelling in the Reach, bolstered by young Lord Rowan and ambitious Randall Tarly. Worse, the Stark forces were rumored to have bypassed Moat Cailin through some secret path shown by Crannogmen, marching south faster than expected. The rebels meant to converge at the Trident, crushing royalists between two fires. Rhaegar tightened the march pace, forcing men beyond comfort. Blisters festered, horses fell. Cersei ordered the quartermasters to distribute vinegar and cloth for foot care, but morale frayed like rotten rope. It was during one torrential night 2 leagues north of Maidenpool that disaster struck. A column of supply wagons lagged behind, mired in mud, and Robert Baratheon's outriders fell upon them like wolves. The carnage was brief yet brutal. 30 men dead, 40 captured, 10 wagons torched. The captured were stripped and released with a single message carved into a plank of oak: "Storm's end, storm's endless wrath." When Connington laid the plank before Rhaegar in the command tent, Cersei watched her husband's face harden into something sharp as broken glass. For the first time, she glimpsed genuine anger banked behind his noble restraint. At dawn, Rhaegar addressed the army from a hastily erected platform. Rain still fell, but he wore no cloak, letting water darken the ruby inlays of his breastplate until they resembled drops of blood. "These men sought to starve our children," he told the soaked soldiers. "They sought to break our will with fire." His voice rang clear across the muddy field. "But storms break upon stone, and dragons are tempered in flame. We will not falter. We will not yield. We will avenge our dead, and bring peace worthy of their sacrifice." The cheers were ragged yet sincere. Later, as Rhaegar returned to the pavilion, Cersei intercepted him. "Your words stirred them," she said, walking beside him. "Words alone will not win us bread," he answered. "Tywin must march, and soon. Then send for him," she urged. "By raven, by rider, it matters not." Rhaegar paused before the tent flap, considering. "Your father waits for certainty," he said. "If he marches too soon against Robert, and my father rouses the Crownlands against him, we face war on 3 fronts. My father will choose the winning side," Cersei said, voice low. "Make it clear which side that is." Rhaegar's expression softened a fraction. "You are relentless, and you are too gentle," she snapped, then regretted the venom. Yet he only sighed, lifting his hand to brush wet strands from her forehead. "Gentle hearts break differently," he murmured. I would shield you from that. She almost laughed, how little he knew of what needed shielding. Instead, she caught his wrist and pressed her lips to the inside, where the pulse beat quick and strong. Shield me by winning, she whispered. He kissed her hair in answer. That night, he wrote a letter sealed with both dragon and lion. Cersei ensured it left at once with 3 swift couriers, each by a different route to Casterly Rock. The game was in motion. 2 days later, fresh sorrows arrived. Elia of Dorne, confined in the Red Keep, suffered a second feverish collapse. Pycelle's raven described her as frail unto death. Aerys, in turn, blamed Cersei's influence for dividing his son's affections. In a fit of madness, he had ordered the city pyromancers to fill the cellars beneath the September of Baelor with wildfire, claiming the faith had conspired against him. Varys' secret warning reached Rhaegar merely hours after the fact. The prince paced until dawn, torn between duty to his dying wife and duty to the realm aflame. Cersei watched the torches cast his shadow tall upon the pavilion wall and understood that choice, dreadful though it was, would soon demand its due. The army pressed on, skirting Maidenpool's smoking outskirts. The raiders had torched warehouses before retreating. Refugees crowded the roadside, clutching bundles, children, chickens, whatever they could carry. Rhaegar ordered food distribution, which slowed their march but salvaged gratitude. Cersei oversaw the effort personally, wading through mud to hand out wheels of cheese and loaves still warm from field ovens. Peasant women wept blessings. Men touched forelocks. She inhaled their reverence like perfume. This was how queenship must be, a theater of generosity crowned by the power to command. In the encampment that evening, Jaime sought her out again, face drawn. "I've been ordered forward," he said, voice pitched low. "Lord Connington wants a scouting party along the western bank of the Trident. I ride at first light." The news twisted inside her. She fought the urge to forbid him. She had no such right here. Instead, she clasped his forearm, fingers digging into leather. "See it done swiftly," she whispered, "and return alive. Do not make me mourn you." He smiled then, that reckless Kingslayer grin not yet earned. "I will return," he promised. 7 hells couldn't keep me. His gaze flicked to her belly, almost imperceptible. "Nor would I leave you alone to raise," he checked himself. "The realm," he finished awkwardly. The word hung between them like an unwelcome witness. That night's sleep evaded her utterly. She rose before dawn and slipped from the tent to watch the scouting party depart. Jaime rode at the head, white cloak billowing, sword strapped over mail bright as frost. As he passed, their eyes met, and something indefinable flashed: love, fear, defiance. Then he was gone, swallowed by gray dawn. 5 days passed with no raven. Each sunrise sharpened her nerves until her tongue bled from biting it. On the 6th evening, as crimson banners snapped listlessly in a damp breeze, a solitary horseman appeared from the north, cloak torn, helm missing. Ser Jaime's destrier bore a different rider, Ser Flement Brax, shaking with exhaustion. He dismounted before Connington's tent, collapsed, and gasped that the scouting party had been ambushed near the fords of the Trident by forces bearing the stag and pine of the Stormlands. Jaime had been taken captive. The roar that rose from Cersei's chest startled even herself. She stormed into the command tent, demanding an immediate rescue. Connington argued they lacked strength to split forces when battle loomed. Rhaegar gripped her shoulders and told her softly that Jaime was a valuable hostage. Robert would not kill him quickly. She tore free, fury burning hotter than any forge. In that moment she hated them all. Robert for seizing what was hers, Rhaegar for reasoned delay, Connington for caution. She returned to her pavilion and flung silver goblets until wine splashed the carpets like blood. That night she composed another letter to Tywin, ink blotting where her hand shook. "Your son is taken. Your daughter sits encircled by vipers. Come, father, come with fire and steel." She sealed it with a kiss of wax and entrusted it to her own personal courier guard. 3 dawns later, the raven returned. Tywin Lannister marched from the west with 40,000 men. Cunnington exhaled relief. Rhaegar allowed himself a small smile. Yet Cersei felt no joy, only an edged anticipation. Father would not come as savior. He would come as judge, weighing crowns like ingots. She must ensure the scales tipped toward her. The army reached the Green Fork as leaves turned amber and gold. Across the river, rebel banners blackened the horizon. Baratheon stags rampant amidst Arryn falcons and Tully trouts. Robert's host was larger than reports suggested, perhaps bolstered by Randall Tarley's ruthlessly drilled columns. Drums thundered across water, a heartbeat of defiance. Rhaegar held council beneath a canopy strung between oaks shedding leaves like dying embers. Arthur Dayne proposed a dawn assault before Robert finished mustering. Cunnington warned that the swollen river might hinder cavalry. Cersei stood at the edge, silent, until Rhaegar beckoned her into the circle. "The stag believes himself born for battle," she said, studying the map. "He will expect you to charge. Deny him that. Hold the river. Force him to come to you. A crown defended is a crown doubled." Cunnington frowned. "Our men's spirits suffer. A passive stance may appear weakness. Then make a show of strength." Cersei pointed to the ford nearest their camp. "Fill the banks with siege engines arrayed behind shields bearing lion and dragon entwined. Display firepots, but do not yet light them. Fear of wildfire can be more potent than the flames." Rhaegar's gaze met hers, and she saw approval there. "We shall test the stag's patience," he said. Preparations began at once. Masons and carpenters commandeered every cart, shaping makeshift trebuchets while alchemists lined clay pots with volatile black powder, less fearsome than true wildfire, yet visually identical once ignited. Cersei toured the lines in a leather jerkin stitched with golden thread, speaking to archers, praising pikemen. She paused often to rest unnoticed against a tree or wagon. Pregnancy's pull had grown unmistakably heavy. Maester Balabar confirmed her suspicion in the privacy of her pavilion. "Half turn of the moon at least," he declared, delighted. Cersei instructed him under threat of exile to keep silent. Even Rhaegar was not yet told. Knowledge was power. Timing was everything. Across the river, Robert at last grew restless. On the 20th day of the standoff, rebel horns brayed in earnest and the stags advanced, shields gleaming beneath a watery sun. They aimed for the shallows where Jaime had been taken, irony not lost on Cersei. Rhaegar held his men until the first rebel ranks waded knee-deep, then signaled. Stone word from trebuchets, smashing water into plumes. False wildfire shattered on impact, erupting in lurid green flame that sent horses rearing. Arrows rained. The rebels broke back, leaving corpses tangled in reeds. Night fell heavy, the sky moonless. Cersei walked the earthworks, torches guttering at her passing. In the distance, screams of the wounded drifted across water, a thin wailing that might have been wolves. She felt no pity. Instead, she focused on the flutter within her womb. Small, uncertain, yet lifelike now, and whispered promises of crowns. At dawn, messengers reported Tywin's host had entered the Riverlands, seizing the Golden Tooth and crossing the Tumblestone. The news shook camp morale like a trumpet of victory, yet Rhaegar's face remained troubled. "What of King's Landing?" he asked Cunnington quietly. "No word from the Red Keep?" "None, Highness." Cunnington looked grave. Cersei stepped closer. "If my father has marched, he cannot protect the city. Aerys remains with only his pyromancers and the city watch." Rhaegar exhaled, eyes closing briefly. "Then traitors may strike there even as we fight here. We stand upon a knife." Cunnington suggested sending Ser Barristan with a small detachment to secure the capital. Rhaegar shook his head. "I need Selmy at my side." He glanced at Cersei, but the queen could command a loyal guard. Her breath caught. Travel now, with Robert across the river and winter closing? Yet the throne itself beckoned. If she took the city before Tywin, if she delivered King's Landing safe into Rhaegar's hands, she would be unstoppable. The decision formed before fear could voice protest. "I will go," she said, Give me 500 picked men and the fastest ship at salt pans. I will reach the capital in a fortnight." Rhaegar hesitated, hand lifting as though to touch her, dropping instead. "The roads are perilous." "I am perilous," she replied, lips quirking. "And I would see our son born in the Red Keep, not a mud-soaked tent." His eyes widened at the word son. She felt a thrill of power at that flicker of wonder. Let him dwell upon it as she traveled. Let him taste hope and fear mixed. That evening, beneath pale stars, they took farewell. Rhaegar's kiss lingered, tinged with the salt of unshed tears. "Return to me," he whispered. "I will return with your throne," she answered. Cersei rode out at first light, escorted by 500 lion dragon guards in enameled scale. Behind her, the camp receded to candle pinpricks. Ahead, the King's Road beckoned through whispering autumn woods. She carried letters of safe passage where such documents still meant anything, coin where they did not. Each jounce of the saddle reminded her of the life within, yet she refused a litter. Queen's Ride, Jaime had once joked. Now she did, and for more than pride. They reached salt pans on the 6th day, to find the docks swarming with refugees and rumors. Small folk spoke of Tywin's host ravaging the riverlands, though always leaving grain stores untouched if village elders declared fealty. Lannister gold bought restraint where Baratheon vengeance bought fear. She boarded the swift galley Sea Stag. She sneered at the name but kept it. Rechristening seemed a frivolity, and set sail down the narrow sea. Gales buffeted the deck. Sailors whispered of storms conjured by drowned gods angry at dragons. Cersei remained on deck despite spray stinging her face, eyes fixed on the horizon glowing faintly with King's Landing's lantern fires. On the evening of the 10th day, the city finally rose into view, its walls lit amber, the grand dome of the Great September gleaming. Yet as Sea Stag tacked into Blackwater Bay, a column of smoke uncoiled from somewhere within the maze of streets. Cersei's stomach tightened. Carried on the wind came a faint, acrid tang wildfire. She tasted it once at Harrenhal's forges. She could never forget the scent. They docked at the King's Gate under dusk's purple shroud. No heralds greeted her. The guards on the wall looked gaunt, fearful. Their cloaks bore no lion, no dragon, only the gold red of the city watch, but the badges were torn. Cersei dismounted onto cobblestones slick with recent rain and maybe, she feared, something fouler. Inside the gatehouse, a sergeant bowed and stammered. "Your Grace, Queen, Princess, beg pardon. The king, he's..." Words dwindled, eyes darting. "Take me to the Red Keep," she ordered. They rode through streets half-empty save clumps of silent citizens peering from doorways. Eerie hush hung where once vendors hawked pies and perfumes. Near the Street of Sisters they passed a charred ruin still smoking. The signboard lay cracked, revealing the crowned star of the faith. Wildfire had licked pale green along its stones. Cersei's escort tightened ranks. The Red Keep's gates yawned open like a wound. No herald announced her arrival. Only Varys appeared, gliding from shadow with powder-dusted palms lifted in uncertain welcome. "My sweet Lady Lannister," he cooed. "What balm to this bruised court your presence must be." Cersei swung down, ignoring the eunuch's obsequious bow. "Where is the king?" "In the throne room," Varys said, voice low. "His Grace has undertaken precautions. Lady Rhaegar is confined to Maegor's holdfast, under guard." Cersei strode up the stairs 2 at a time, lion dragon guards clanking behind. The great doors stood ajar. Beyond, torchlight flickered over pools of emerald liquid seeping between flagstones. Wildfire barrels, smashed open, their contents ready to ignite at a spark. Upon the iron throne sat Aerys II, beard unkempt, eyes fever-bright, fingers crusted with dried blood. At the foot of the dais knelt Grand Maester Pycelle, weeping openly. "My lovely daughter," Aerys crooned when Cersei drew near, though his lips cracked on the words. "Have you come to watch the world burn with me?" She halted 3 steps below him, gaze raking over shattered barrels, serpentine puddles. One lantern drop, one torch tilt, and all would vanish in flame. Her mind raced. Wildfire's volatile fumes, her unborn child, the realm's future. She forced her breathing slow. "I have come," she said evenly, "to deliver my lord husband's decree. Prince Rhaegar commands all pyromancers stand down and surrender their stores to the Dragon Lion Guard." Aerys laughed, high and shrill. "Rhaegar commands? Rhaegar plots my crown. You think I do not know?" He slashed a hand toward Pycelle, who flinched. "Traitors, every one, but the fire will cleanse them. Cleanse you if you stand in my way." His gaze slid to the wildfire slicks near her boots. "A single spark, and we ascend to glory." Cersei's heart hammered, yet her voice emerged calm. "Glory is life, your grace, not ashes. Let me guide you to safety." She took one step, another, hands outspread. Behind her she heard the rip of steel leaving scabbards. Her guard menacing pyromancers perched on balconies with torches. Aerys's eyes narrowed. "You cannot deceive me, girl. I see the lust for power in you. You are Tywin's cub. And a cub cares for its pride," she answered. "Let me protect mine, your dynasty." She reached the final step below the dais, wildfire fumes sharp in her throat. The king clutched the arm of the Iron Throne, a jagged blade shaped like a claw. "Swear fealty," he hissed. "On your unborn womb." The words stunned her. He saw, or guessed. Does madness grant second sight? Her belly felt suddenly exposed, vulnerable to the throne's edges. She steadied her breath. "I swear," she began, voice steady as steel, "by the blood of House Lannister and the fire of House Targaryen, that I will defend the rightful king of Westeros. Not you, old man," she added silently, "but the realm might parse it later." Aerys's manic grin shimmered in torchlight. "Good," he breathed. "Then pour the oil. Light it and prove your love." Her pulse thundered. "Wildfire obeys no master," she said. "It will devour us all. Let me instead remove these barrels to the dragon dungeons beneath, where they belong." Aerys cocked his head, contemplating. The silence lengthened. Sweat prickled her spine. A torch guttered on a balcony. A spark hissed downward but winked out before touching green. She exhaled silently. At last the king nodded, slow. "Take them," he said, "but leave one, my crown's guardian." She bowed deeply, suppressing tremor. "As you command." The removal took hours. Soldiers sliding barrels onto reinforced sledges, pyromancers supervising, Varys fluttering with nervous chatter. Cersei oversaw every movement, insisting on damp cloths over torches, wide paths cleared of straw. When the last barrel rolled out, she allowed herself a single breath of relief. One remained near the dais as Aerys demanded. She left it for now, there would be time later. Night sank to deepest black before the throne room cleared. Aerys slumped on iron spines, muttering. Cersei approached again, crown of wildfire fumes replaced by a calmer air. "May I escort you to your chambers, your grace?" His eyelids drooped. "The throne is my bed. Leave me with my dreams." She bowed, retreating. Outside the doors, Varys awaited. "A masterful performance," he purred. "Had you hesitated, we'd be roasting." Cersei fixed him with a hard look. "The king's mind slips hourly. We must keep him isolated from flame." "Agreed," Varys whispered. "Yet moves must be delicate. He has ears everywhere." "So do I," she said, brushing past. She spent what remained of the night in the Tower of the Hand, Tywin's old quarters, drafting edicts that required only the king's seal. Restoration of bread prices, abolition of certain taxes, recall of loyal garrisons from Crackclaw Point. Varys furnished her with signets, explaining that Aerys rarely remembered which seal he used. She signed each parchment, then collapsed onto a couch for an hour's restless doze. Dawn found her on the ramparts overlooking the city. Smoke still curled from the Faith's ruin, but bakeries reopened and fisherfolk crowded the docks. She inhaled the scent of fresh-baked bread mingling with brine and thought, "Mine. All mine if I dare." The thought had barely formed when a horn call echoed from the North River Gate. She hurried down stone steps, skirts whisking dust, her escort struggling to keep pace. From the barbican she saw banners cresting the road. Crimson with golden lion, gold with crimson lion. A sea of Lannister standards rippling. Tywin had arrived. His column filed across the drawbridge in eerie quiet, armor gleaming, helms polished so bright they reflected the red dawn. At its head rode Tywin himself, visage carved from unforgiving granite. He reined in as Cersei emerged, and for a heartbeat father and daughter regarded one another without word. Cersei descended the final stair, chin high. "Lord Hand," she greeted, voice ringing across stone. Tywin's pale eyes flicked to the guards flanking her. Lion dragon badges and back. "Your Grace," he replied, measured. "I come at Prince Rhaegar's summons." She smiled thinly. "And at your son's need. Jaime languishes in Robert's camp." A muscle twitched in Tywin's jaw. "He will be freed when Robert is defeated, and Robert will be defeated when this city stands secure." His gaze swept upward toward the high windows of the throne room. "Is it?" She considered lying, but Tywin smelled lies as wolves scented blood. "Aerys sits upon wildfire," she said. "I have removed most of it. One barrel remains under his watch." Tywin dismounted, boots striking stone like hammers. "Then that barrel must be unmade. And the king?" Tywin's expression remained blank. "Kings fall. Dynasties endure." In that moment she understood with visceral clarity. Her father would see Aerys dead before sunset if it served the realm, and his grandchildren. Alliances would shift like sand upon his mere word. She felt the child stir within and made her choice. "The barrel is guarded," she said. "But the guard answers to me." She met his gaze.
"Aerys will die quietly."
"Rhaegar will take the throne. Our line will sit beside him." Tywin studied her, measuring steel. After a long breath, he inclined his head. "Then let it be done." That night, while the city slept beneath a hush heavy as velvet, Cersei donned a simple gown of black velvet trimmed only by a slender chain of rubies. She crossed the courtyard alone, lion dragon guards stationed discreetly at the periphery. The throne room doors opened at her word. Inside, torches guttered in sconces, casting spidery shadows across iron blades. The barrel of wildfire still squatted like a toad before the dais. Aerys slept in the throne's grasp, chin on breast, fingers resting on the arm curved like an upthrust dagger. She approached with soundless steps. In her hand lay a slim vial of pale liquid essence of nightshade, brewed strong enough to fell giants. Pycelle himself had provided it, though he believed it intended for Lady Rhaella's fevers. Cersei uncorked the vial, letting its bitter odor rise. She paused, one final heartbeat, to gaze upon Aerys's gaunt face. Madness had hollowed him. He looked older than the rock itself. She felt no pity. "Your kingdom," she whispered, voice just breath, "requires a new dawn." She poured the liquid gently between his cracked lips. He stirred, eyes fluttering open to faint slits. Recognition flickered. Daughter, traitor, savior? She would never know. He tried to speak, but words drowned in potion's tide. Moments later, his frantic heartbeat slowed, then ceased. Silence claimed the Iron Throne. Cersei stood motionless, waiting to confirm. When at last she exhaled, it emerged as a shiver. She signaled. 2 guards entered, men of proven loyalty, and lifted the withered corpse from the throne, swaddling it in a plain shroud. The wildfire barrel they rolled carefully aside, out to the courtyard where alchemists would neutralize it under Tywin's watch. By dawn, ravens would fly to Rhaegar. His father dead of sudden collapse, the city secured, the throne empty for his return. Cersei wrote the message herself, sealing it with both lion and dragon. When ink dried, she pressed the parchment over her heart, feeling the small flutter with an answer. She ascended the steps of the Iron Throne then, alone but for silent shadows. For one breathless instant she allowed herself to rest a hand upon a cold blade lower down, feeling the weight of centuries, the pull of destiny. She did not sit yet. That honor awaited the prince. But she whispered to the echoing hall a vow no priest would hear. "This realm is ours. Gold and fire, lion and dragon, and I, Cersei of the Rock, will shape its future. Outside, the bells began to ring, low and uncertain, groping for a reason. Dawn's first light lanced through stained glass windows, setting moats ablaze. Cersei closed her eyes and saw the path ahead. Rhaegar returning victorious, Robert's rebellion broken, Jaime freed, a son born beneath dragon banners. She tasted triumph like sweet wine. Ahead, storm still brewed. Battle at the Trident, Robert's hammer, Ned Stark's honor, Martell vengeance. But in that moment, upon the silent throne, she felt unbreakable. The Game of Thrones had turned a new page, written in gold and scarlet ink, and she, poised between lion and dragon, held the quill. Blackwater Bay lay silver beneath crescent moonlight when the first raven fluttered from the Red Keep, its black wings carrying news of the Mad King's death and the city's sudden calm. It found Rhaegar's war pavilion before dawn, clawing at the canvas flap until a bleary-eyed squire untied the lashings. Within, candles still guttered from the last council and maps lay strewn like wounded men. The prince had not slept. He sat armored yet helmless beside Arthur Dayne, the sword of the morning, who sharpened dawn with ritualistic strokes that hissed like wind through grass. When the bird settled on the war table, its sealed parchment dangling, Rhaegar's heartbeat hammered louder than whetstone. He broke the wax, lion and dragon impressed in one, and read by trembling flame. His father was gone, peacefully, the letter claimed, final breaths witnessed only by Grand Maester Pycelle and the Queen in waiting. King's Landing stood unburned, its stores intact, the faith placated. The city watch sworn anew to the regency of Prince Rhaegar Targaryen until his triumphant return. Signed, Cersei of houses Lannister and Targaryen, protector of the realm until the dragon's homecoming. The parchment trembled between his fingers. Arthur's gaze flicked upward. Good or ill? Both, Rhaegar answered, voice hoarse. The realm is spared our father's madness, but the weight of kingship shifts faster than the earth turns. He folded the letter. I must survive today to claim tomorrow. Outside, horns sounded reveille. The royal camp stirred. Banners raised limp from dew, fires coaxed to life, men groaning from damp sleep. Rhaegar stepped into pale pre-dawn, exhaling mist. Across the green fork, rebel watchfires glittered like fallen stars. Between them lay a river swollen by autumn rains, mud-gray and surly. Somewhere beyond that darkness, Robert Baratheon tested the haft of his great warhammer, nostrils flaring like a stag in rut. At Robert's elbow stood Eddard Stark, solemn as winter, and Jon Arryn, eyes keen as falcon talons. Rhaegar imagined their night, how they must have planned lines of charge, whispered prayers to old gods and new, sworn to guard their captured golden prize, Ser Jaime. Rage curled inside him. Fury at kidnapping, fury at the looming waste of life, fury at prophecy's cruel geometry. He ordered sunrise muster. Trumpets blared, drums answered. Squinting soldiers shuffled from tents, the clank of plate and chain shattering morning hush. Rhaegar walked the ranks bareheaded so every man could see his unshadowed face, silver hair damp with river fog. Knights of the realm, he called, and silence spread like light across water. Today we fight not for a tyrant's fear, but for a realm reborn, where ash shall feed no fire, and peace sits crowned on iron. Hold the line, hold your brothers, hold the dream. Swords raised in answer, steel flashing cold rose. Far to the left, John Connington readied the riverbank engine Cersei had conceived. Skeletal trebuchets draped in painted canvas, their arms now strung with casks of lamp oil and sand to blind charging cavalry. Behind earthworks, archers knocked goose-fletched shafts soaked in pitch. Along the right, Arthur Dayne arranged heavy cavalry into 3 wedges, each lanced with a banner. The 3-headed dragon entwined with roaring lion, a sigil so newly minted it gleamed unnicked by war. Rhaegar climbed onto his pale courser, smoke, armor sable inlaid with garnet lions marching across pectoral plates. At his hip hung Blackfire, ancestor's steel, blade of conquerors, and above his heart he wore a brooch wrought in the shape of a golden harp from Cersei's own jewelers. Music and metal, love and strategy fused. He breathed once, steady. Dawn broke in amber shards. Mist shredded to reveal lines of rebels arrayed opposite. Stag banners rippling above a sea of kite shields painted blue for storms and loyalty. Robert spurred forward alone, warhammer resting on his thigh, its spiked head glimmering. Even across half a field Rhaegar saw the man's grin split beard thick cheeks. A grin that mocked fear. Robert raised the hammer high and roared a challenge that rolled across the river like thunder. Men answered with cheers, pounding shields, stamping mud. Rebel horns brayed, echoing griffin shrieks. On their flank, Randall Tarley's disciplined squares advanced in perfect cadence, pikes bristling. Cunnington loosed the first volley. Trebuchets groaned and released. Casques arced, bursting midair to spill burning oil into the shallows. Smoke billowed green-black. Baratheon outriders veered, horses screaming as sand clouds blinded them. Yet Robert bellowed for advance. The vanguard pressed into knee-deep water, shields locked overhead against arrows. Flames guttered on slick iron but could not halt their surge. Rhaegar drew Blackfire and signaled. Dane's wedge thundered toward the ford further north where the bend narrowed. Hoofs churned foam. Rebel infantry scrambled to pivot, but muddy ground sucked at boots. Targaryen spear tips crashed through lines, lion banners slicing like comet tails. Cries of agony tore air. The river churned with blood. Among chaos, Ser Barristan's thin column slipped under cover of thick smoke, angling southward toward a prisoner's camp manned by green militia. Their secret charge: retrieve Jaime Lannister before battle tide pulled him under. Barristan led, white cloak streaming, blade whistling. Farm boys holding the pen quailed. Few had ever seen real war. They broke before steel touched mail. Barristan slashed the rope corral, and Jaime mounted a stolen courser in one fluid swing, chains still wrapped about one wrist like grotesque jewelry. "Where is the gold bitch?" Jaime rasped over drum thunder. "In King's Landing, crowning herself," Barristan replied between swings. Jaime laughed, wild. "Then let's finish here fast." Together they carved a path riverward, aiming to rejoin regal lines. At midfield Robert sensed the rescue. His roar redoubled, hammer twirling overhead. He plunged through water waist-high, surging for Rhaegar's banner. Stark followed, ice-bright longsword raised. Aaron held reserves but signaled archers forward. Arrows hissed across smoky sky, one piercing the throat of Ser Miles Mouton who tumbled, gargling crimson, beside the prince. Rhaegar's jaw clenched. Grief could wait. Hours stretched elastic. Lines bent, reformed, shattered. Where Cunnington's engines failed, Lion Dragon shield walls held, red and black interlocking. Where rebel spears thrust Dornish outriders, sworn to Elaya's children and now, by necessity, to Cersei's unborn, harassed flanks, before wheeling away under Miles Toyn's commands. Noon's sun climbed but wind remained frigid, slicing through gaps in armor to chill sweat. Rhaegar sighted Robert at last, hammer dripping gore, shield lost, stag helm dented. Their eyes locked over riven heaps of men. Rhaegar turned smoke and urged a gallop. Blackfire lifted. Noise faded to a heartbeat. Each had dreamt this moment since summer's first rebellion whisper, though for Rhaegar the dream tasted of dread. Prophecy said a dragon must die beneath a bleeding star. He carried garnet gems on his chest, stars cut from lion's hoard, gems now cracked, edges smeared. To bleed or to conquer, he could no longer divine. They met where river became marshland, water splashing thigh-high. Robert swung a lateral arc. Rhaegar leaned, felt wind of steel brush cheek. Blackfire answered, slashing along hammer haft, sparks spitting. Horses reared. Again Robert struck, overhead slam that broke Smoke's skull. The beast collapsed, pitching Rhaegar sideways into blood-slick mud. Robert waited for kill. Rhaegar rolled, rose, water coursing from plates, and stepped into his cut. Blackfire's point kissed Robert's mail coat beneath arm. Chain rings burst. The stag grunted, staggering, but fury overrode pain. The hammer fell again, grazing Rhaegar's pauldron, numbing shoulder. They circled, snarling breath clouding. Around them, soldiers paused, drawn as moths to duel's wildfire. Ned Stark called for Robert to pull back, but the stag heard nothing. Rhaegar's foot found firmer ground. He lunged, black fire arching downward in comet line, shearing half through Robert's thigh. Blood spurted dark. Robert faltered, weight dropping. A hush rippled. Could dragons truly fell such a bull? But Robert bellowed new wrath, planted wounded leg deep, and heaved hammer two-handed in diagonal slash. Rhaegar attempted parry. Blackfire caught head of hammer, blade shattering spike, yet force traveled along haft. Broken metal slammed breastplate garnets. Gems exploded, ruby shards flying crimson bright beneath sun. A shower of red stars. One fragment sliced Rhaegar's cheek, opening skin to bone. Blood coursed down pallid armor, steaming. Prophecy gnawed. Dragon beneath bleeding star. In his dizziness he nearly laughed. Would seers claim this ruby rain fulfilled vision? No time, Robert advanced again. Pain roared inside Rhaegar's skull. Shoulder half dead, cheek gushing, yet resolve crystallized. He pivoted low, knee-deepening cut's angle, and drove pommel into Robert's gut. Air whooshed from stag lung. Rhaegar rose, backhand slash severing hammer-bearing wrist. The hammer splashed away, sinking with dull finality. Robert screamed, clutching stump. Rhaegar drove fist to chin. Giant staggered then toppled, mud blooming around. Stunned silence. Rebels nearest gasped. Rhaegar pointed blackfire at Stark. Yield, he rasped. Ned Stark's gray eyes flickered to Robert, then to swirling battle. His sword dipped but did not fall. He needs Maester, Stark said, voice rough. But our cause ends here, Rhaegar interrupted. Behind him, Arthur Dayne's wedge broke last rebel reserves, scattering Tarly's platoons. From distant banks, Tywin's crimson flood poured, 40,000 fresh, armor unsullied. The rebel rear turned to see lions descending like sunset storm. Eddard Stark exhaled fog. Around him rebels laid arms, dropping with metallic rain tinkle. He knelt beside Robert, pressing tourniquet to wrist. I yield for House Stark and the North, he declared, voice carrying. Spare the wounded, honor those fallen. Horn blasts signaled retreat from Arryn line. Falcons fluttered skyward as their riders lowered flags. Connington called ceasefire. Lannister drums rolled in triumph, echoing across water thick with debris and corpses. Jaime, blood-spattered beside Barristan, reached Rhaegar first. He saluted, eyes bright. Your Grace, the field is ours. Rhaegar nodded, though vision swam. He turned to Arthur Dayne. Send riders to every quarter. Collect our dead. Tend theirs. Mercy will mend tomorrow. Then to Jaime, ride ahead. Tell the Queen the day is won, and the realm needs her courage still. Jaime grinned, spurring mud-flecked horse. As he galloped away, Ned Stark rose, Robert slung across shoulders despite weight. Rhaegar watched the image, honor carrying wounded fury, and felt something like awe. My maester will treat him, Rhaegar said. He will face judgment after. Stark nodded once. Then may the gods judge us all. Rain began, thin drizzle washing blood from steel. It hissed upon ruby shards strewn where blackfire had sundered jewelry, each gem glinting like starfall. Rhaegar wiped cheek, smearing muttered prophecy across skin, and for the first time believed they might outrun foretelling. Day turned to dusk while field surgeons carved path between moaning men. Fires were lit against damp. Rhaegar refused tent rest until every pyre for the dead stood ready. Only then, beneath canvas smelling of sweat and herbs, did he allow leeches to kiss his cheek. Did he drink Maester's dream wine? In feverish twilight he saw Cersei's face, gold lit by wildfire's ghost, lips whispering victory promises. He slept at last, heart steadier than prophecy predicted. King's Landing learned of triumph before sun dawned next day. Jaime rode through city gates cloaked in the stag-stolen standard draped upside down, a jest the gold cloaks relished. Citizens wept gratitude. Bells clanged, bakers hurled free loaves, vintners uncorked casks into gutters. Cersei watched from a balcony, one hand curled around railing, the other around her swelling belly. She felt the city's pulse sink to hers, quickened, thrilled, anxious. Jaime dismounted below and gazed up, their twin smiles mirrored across distance. She convened council in Tower of the Hand. Tywin, Varys, Pycelle, and Qyburn, a recent addition favored for quiet competence. News spread across parchment. Robert alive yet maimed, Aeron capitulated, Stark seeking parole for northern levies. Victory, yes, but fragile. Dorne still simmered over Elaya's health, and Reach lords unsettled by Mace Tyrell's indecision eyed marriage alliances. Cersei laid palms on the map Rhaegar once pored over. "The prince will march south within a fortnight," she declared. "When he enters this gate, the Iron Throne must greet him draped in laurels, not scandal. We must craft the narrative now." Tywin inclined head. "The narrative writes itself. Tyrant dead, visionary prince ascends. Lion queen tames dragon flame. But small folk ask why a king died without trial." Varys purred. "Confusion breeds whisper." Cersei met his beady eyes. "Then we give them clarity." Aerys' heart failed upon hearing his son rode to negotiate peace. Shock, not poison, took him. The maesters will swear it. Gold will encourage memory. Pycelle nodded vigorously. His Grace's heart was indeed frail. See it done. She turned to Qyburn. "Fetch from black cells those rumored to have abetted wildfire plots. Stage confessions. Then execute them. Blame them for all." Qyburn's smile was thin. "Nothing easier." Tywin's gaze lingered on Cersei with faint caution. "And the faith. Rebuilding funded by Crown. Double wages for masons." She tapped belly. "Let them see restoration blossom as a sign from Seven." The hand considered, then offered rare praise. "Well struck." Night found Cersei strolling the Maidenvault gardens, lilies releasing dusk perfume. Jaime trailed at respectful pace until shadows hid them from guards. Then he closed distance, seizing her hands. "All done," he whispered, eyes shining. "I watched rivers run red, and all I thought was getting back to you." She rested head against his breastplate, heartbeat echoing. "You did," she murmured. She told him of child quickening. His breath hitched. They kissed among moonlit blossoms, history's eyes blind for once. Yet when they parted, war lingered in silence. "Father means to anoint Rhaegar publicly outside Baelor's September," Jaime said. "Hill where crown of fathers making. A dragon in lion jaws, I heard." "Good." Cersei's smile edged knife-sharp. "Let the world see who feeds dragons now." Rhaegar crossed Blackwater 10 days later beneath skies cleared by late autumn wind. City walls thrummed with drums. Flower petals rained from windows. Cersei met the procession wearing cloth of gold over mail, a subtle reminder of partnership in conquest. She bowed deep as he dismounted. Gesture of queen to king, wife to husband, conspirator to conspirator. He lifted her, eyes luminous. "My father?" he asked softly. "At peace," she answered. "The realm awaits its new dawn." In the throne room, pyromancers now gone. He ascended stairs streaked with recent polish. He paused halfway, turned, beckoned. Cersei stepped beside him, and together they mounted to blade-forged seat. He sat, slow, deliberate, black fire across knees. Then he drew her forward so she stood at his right hand. Trumpets sounded. Crowd roared. Tywin placed a circlet on Rhaegar's brow. Valyrian steel washed in red gold, set with 3 tiny rubies and 1 lion-shaped topaz. When Tywin stepped back, Cersei felt the hall's gaze latch onto her flatly curved stomach, speculation rippling like heat. Rhaegar raised voice. "Let all men know the long night is cast aside. I pledge bread where shadow once fell, mercy where wrath once ruled." He turned to her. "And standing with me, the lioness who guarded the gates, Cersei Targaryen, first of her name. Together we mend the realm." Cheers thundered, drowning bells. Yet not all voices joined. among envoys from Storm's End a few hands clenched hilts, and in back rows septons traded uneasy looks. Cersei saw them all, memorized dissent. That evening, in the solar of the Maiden Vault, Rhaegar and Cersei dined alone save for silent servants. Candlelight flickered over silvered carafes. He reached across table, tracing her knuckles. "You saved the city," he said. "You saved the realm," she countered. They spoke of dead. Brandon Stark, Lord Ricard, men fallen on riverbanks. Rhaegar's mouth trembled at mention of Elia, still bedridden. "She remains my wife," he said, pain-shading voice. "But the High Septon will grant annulment upon her request. She seeks quiet sanctuary in Sunspear." Cersei absorbed the news calmly, an outcome prearranged with Tywin's envoys to Doran. "Then let her find peace," she said, "and we shall forge the rest." Later they walked ramparts where the wind keened through crenels. Rhaegar glanced skyward. "Comet appears early this winter," he murmured. "Red as blood." "Let prophets chase omens," Cersei replied. "I'll chase results." She drew him inside before cold-kissed child. Yet storms brew even in triumph. In Riverlands, survivors whispered of Ruby Field where magic soared. Some claimed Rhaegar slew Robert with sorcery, others that Jaime Lannister rode invisible to sabotage Hammer. Tales reached Winterfell, stoking northern pride wounded by southern politics. Lady Lisa Arryn wept over lost honor, and rumor said Jon Arryn planned journey to capital seeking redress. Across sea, the free cities eyed unstable Westeros markets. Bravos demanded repayment of Aerys' debts. In Old Town, Mother House Septas lamented wildfire upon sacred stones, quietly cursing new queen's ambitions. Cersei addressed each ember ruthlessly. Ravens dispatched gold to Bravos. Bankers soothed. Tyrells received offers of royal pardons and marriage prospects. Marjorie to be future queen consort to unborn prince if male. Another tie of rose to Dragonlion. Mace Preened pledged loyalty. Dornish envoys accepted safe conduct for Elia and children to Sunspear. Bloodless concession that mollified sands beneath Rhaegar's feet yet earned whispers of favoritism. Most delicate, though, was Robert's fate. Maester Balabar saved his life, using leeches and tincture of hash. Robert awakened bound, stump bandaged, fury bubbled. Stark sat beside Daly, reading letters from Catelyn promising safe passage if oath given. When Rhaegar visited, Robert spat. "You wear woman's gold," he hissed. "Kill me, dragon." Rhaegar refused. "The realm needs symbols," he said. "Yours is wrath restrained." He offered pardon conditional on vow to take the black. Robert raged 3 days, then relented when fever returned. Ned Stark escorted him north in chains. Winterfell accepted Broken Stag quietly, but the wall braced for tempest. Within fortnight ravens shrieked news that wildlings massed in numbers unseen for generations. Jon Arryn arrived, pressing to see executed conspirators. Men Cersei had already put to sword. He left capital uneasy and uncertain how deftly truth bent now. In council, as storms of policy fell, Cersei's belly swelled. Rhaegar named her queen consort properly during Midwinter Feast, presenting her with dragonbone scepter capped in gold lion head. Minstrels sang ballads of Lion's Vigil, comparing her to Nymeria and Visenya both. She accepted applause but trusted applause less than daggers. Every smile might hide edge. She raised new order of Queensguard, 7 women knights sworn to her and child, drawing scorn from old houses but enthralling street poets. Most surprising convert was Brienne of Tarth, arriving with letter of recommendation from Ser Barristan himself. Cersei saw use, a tall, loyal blade unswayed by male courtly charms. News from Dragonstone charred tranquility. Volcanic fissures flared, belching smoke. Some hermit pyromancer claimed dragons stirring beneath. Rhaegar's eyes lit with possibility, prophecy again. Cersei quelled his zeal with pragmatic treasurer's ledgers. Harbor repairs, bread subsidies, new fleet. Dragons cost coin, she warned. Still, in early spring they sailed to the island fortress. Maester samples of obsidian were loaded, Valyrian texts consulted. In beneath castle caverns glowing with faint heat, Rhaegar traced runes on black stone eggs once gifted by Bravo centuries prior. He spoke of the prince that was promised. She thought of air safe within, kicked strong at mention of fire. On final night there, Rhaegar laid hand to rough-scaled shell, and it pulsed faintly warm. They shared glance of wonder and dread. Back in King's Landing, Tywin consolidated. Goldcloaks reorganized under new commander Janos Slynt, his loyalty purchased. Guild charters renewed on favorable terms to Lannister lending houses. Cersei watched father weave unseen net. She vowed to learn every knot lest it snare her future. Elia departed quietly, children escorted by Prince Lewin Martell. At docks she kissed Rhaegar's cheek in farewell, eyes hollow but gentle. To Cersei she offered faint smile. "Guard him from dreams," she whispered, voice hoarse. Cersei inclined head, acknowledging battle of wives none else would grasp. When ravens announced Rhaella's death, childbirth complications after stillborn babe conceived in late Mad King's days, the court mourned dutifully. Cersei arranged funeral rites with grandeur, though privately she thanked Seven for thinning succession maze. Spring air warmed, blossoms dusted streets. The realm breathed near peace. Yet along narrow sea rumors of sell-sails massing for exiles reached Varys' spiders. Viserys Targaryen, mere boy, fled with loyal shadows to Lys, braying claim to throne stolen by Lion Witch. Cersei dismissed, child would serve as distant caution. But prophecy seldom sleeps. On moonless night, masked figures infiltrated red keep dungeons, seeking wildfire caches rumored still hidden. Queen's Guard intercepted. One traitor died whispering, bright flame rises. Word reached Cersei as she cradled newborn son 2 weeks early. Prince Rhaegar, named for power rather than gentleness. She kissed dark hair and vowed flames would obey her alone. The christening filled great September restored, marble gleaming. High Septon anointed infant with 7 oils. Rhaegar held child aloft, voice rough with awe. Tywin's pride flickered. Jaime stood as Lord Commander of newly minted White Lions, sworn to guard Prince's cradle. Bells rang across city. Yet in alley shadows beggars muttered predictions of dragon winters, of gold cracked by flame. On stepstones, sell-sail fleets prepared. Night fell over capital, torchlight flickering across red one-head banners newly designed by Cersei. A crowned dragon cleft by lion claws, symbol of union and warning both. She stood at tower window, Rhaegar slumbering against velvet. Rhaegar joined, arms encircling. "Does peace feel real?" he asked. She considered city sprawling, flickers of unrest, father's silent schemes, prophecies half-met riddles. She kissed infant brow. "Peace is what we forge each dawn," she answered, "and sharpen each dusk." Prayer bells told Compline. Somewhere in distant crypt of Dragonstone, eggs shivered. Cersei smiled at horizon, lioness content yet hungry. The game endured, but pieces moved to her rhythm now, gold for coin, dragon for fire, child for future. And should prophecy rise again, it would find her waiting, Blackfire's mate blade ready, kings and queens alike dancing to a song not of ice and fire, but of will and desire, composed in a woman's quiet, ruthless heart.